Okay. Well, I know you guys are all quiet because you guys came for a reason, and that's to hear more about creative financing. And so I'm super excited to have Trevor and Dane here. They are both from SMI Commercial Real Estate. Come on up, guys. And honestly, I wish I knew more to give them a better intro here, but I'm excited to hear more of their story. Make sure that you give a plug for your monthly meetup. Trevor just started a monthly meetup in Salem area, first Wednesday of the month. I got to have a chance to go to that here last week, and it was excellent. And they've said, hey, we've got a lot of information, but but they're looking for questions too, and would love to make this more conversational as well. So please raise your hand, or if something doesn't make sense, please let them know, ask questions, and thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.
Yeah, like Ryan said, stop us at any point, ask us questions. Creative finance, usually people ask us a lot of questions. That makes it a lot easier for us to give us good input, you guys. So I'm Trevor. I started out house hacking, and now I have about 100 doors mixed between multifamily and single family from Portland down to Albany area.
Dane, I got started because I wanted to get invested in commercial real estate, didn't have a great idea how to. I started with SVN over different brokers than where Bjorn was at, but quickly met with Gabe, who's our principal broker, and he kind of started to teach us the ropes of creative financing, and then said, hey, go bring me a deal, and then we'll buy it. And that's typically the gatekeep, as he says, you go find one, structure it, and then bring it to me, and we can buy it together. So that's kind of how he figures out who's actually gonna try to commit to it, I guess. And we closed on our first deal last month, which we'll get into. But we mostly structure deals with seller carrybacks. The main focus is that we can do the traditional seller carry where we say, hey, we'll bring 20% down. We shoot for less than 20% down. But the structure that we pitch most owners to at least, is we say, hey, instead of that, would you rather get 70% out up front and then only have to carry back 30 to 35% on it? And the way we do that is we structure with a bank loan as well as a seller carryback. So it's kind of a funkier deal than normal because you're getting two loans on it. But as long as we typically shoot for value add properties, so as long as there's some upside on it, then we can make it pencil out over 5 to 10 years, depending on interest rate, term, and then anything else that I guess goes into each of the loans, and then the value add on the property itself.
Yeah, so just to get an idea, how many of you are single family investors, or most of you guys single family? Okay, how many multifamily people do we have in here? Okay, so half and half. I'll talk about so I started out with the single family space, and I started investing when I was 22, I had no money, so you had to basically figure out how to do creative finance if you wanted to buy deals. I started out with my house hacks, became a broker, had no W-2 income to qualify after that. So I started getting my friends to buy fourplexes, they'd go live in it, we'd transfer title to our LLC. Have you guys heard of subject to and all that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, so it's the same idea. Your mortgage and your title are separate, so you can transfer title of a property while triggering the due on sale clause, which is the risk.
Can you say that again?
Yeah, while triggering the due on sale clause?
Just your subject
to
so, and kind of back up on that.
Yeah, it's the idea of you have title on a property and you have a mortgage on the property. People think they go together. They do not always go together. You have loan covenants, and the commercial world is a lot different than the residential world. In the commercial world, they're sweeping title a lot, and it depends on the lender and talking to your lender and how you want to handle that. In the residential world, not so much. So we were buying properties, or my friend was buying properties. We were transferring it to an LLC, and I would buy in at that point 1.5%, 3% down, own a property for basically no money. So for a lot of you house hacking and people asking you how you do deals, or I know there's a lot of you guys who do Airbnbs there, it's a really good way to get into deals with none of your own money. It's just being aware of that risk of the due on sale clause and how do you handle that at that time. So when we were buying those deals, we had money to go refinance it worst case and get out of it. I came up with that idea just trying to figure out how to do deals. I know you guys listen to Bigger Pockets, Pace Morby, a ton of information on it now. But I just came up with the idea, went and talked to an attorney and asked him about it, and he's like, oh yeah, people do this all the time, blah, blah, blah. Told me how to structure it, do all that. So started out doing that. Then I started moving to triplexes with owner carries. And the first couple of those I did, I got an owner or bank financing first position, and then just slapped a second on it post close with this after with the seller carry. So I got 80% bank loan, 20% seller carry post close with a residential loan, threw it on 100% leverage, value add property, bought those for like $350 a piece, worth $500 once you fix them up and do all that. And that's the other thing we want to talk about with debt and how we structure them.
Oh, like overlap?
Well, yeah, no. So with a seller carry, the idea is, well, there's a couple different ideas, but you can pay any price you want if you get the right terms, and that's a big thing we play with. Because, I mean, if you go buy a property for $400 at 5% interest rate, you can pay $800 for it at 0% principal only. And then you can play anywhere between that space. So that's the cool part about seller finance is if you can figure out how to underwrite a deal and do math, I mean, you can really pay any price you want if you get the right terms, which sellers love because you have a lot of emotional sellers who are stuck on super high price no one else will pay. And we're like, we can do it for you.
Yeah.
You just have to give us, this term, this rate and whatnot. And it doesn't work for everyone, but there's a shocking amount of deals that it does work for.
Yeah, I'll say and even, I guess as long as you get the right terms, obviously what he's saying it works. So on a deal where there wasn't a ton of value add, but we had a long enough runway on the carry, we said, hey, if rents increase by just 4%. So it wasn't Section 8, but it was some sort of government subsidized housing they paid for part of their rents. And so we just assumed, hey, it's up in Portland, rents are probably going to increase by 4% on average over the next 10 years. Even if they increased by, I think we had it at 3%, then we would pay down enough of the principal on the loan so that when the time came to pay off the seller's note, we had to bring 1.6%. And that was assuming a higher expense ratio than they were even running it at.
So yeah, what he's talking about there is just the idea of bringing 75% bank financing,
Yeah.
25% seller financing, combining those, and you pay down enough principal over like a 10-year period. Over a 10-year period, you'll pay down 22% principal. So worst case scenario, if you underwrite the deal, property doesn't increase by $1 in 10 years, you've paid down 22% loan. You bring 3% to pay off your seller note. Yeah, right.
Lots of questions. You guys are going really fast.
Oh yeah. Yeah, stop us at any point.
But so a couple things. Going through some real specific deals, ones you've done recently, or anything that you've exited would be awesome. And really kind of going through, here's the purchase price, here's how we, structured it. Also, I don't know that very many people have done. Maybe a handful in here have done the owner carried second. Can you also kind of describe that? Do you have to talk to the bank about it? Like, how do you have that conversation? What are the implications, or what things do you need to get set up ahead of time to make that work?
Yeah, so the owner carry on a second is a super interesting thing. Depends on your relationship with the lender for one. Some will let you leverage deals 100% on the front end. Most commercial loans will not. They will want to see skin in the game. And they won't let you put a second on a property post-close even. They'll call your loan due. In the residential space, it's the same idea, like getting a HELOC 5 years later, but rather than 5 years later, you're putting it on 5 minutes later. So in the residential space, it's not too complicated. You're just doing it post-close typically. And you will have lenders who will let you do it at closing too, depending on your relationship.
Do you have any lender recommendations for that?
A lot of time it's credit unions and your personal relationship with the credit union. So one credit union may let you do it, but not let me do it if we don't have an account with them, don't have a loan with them. So it's kind of case by case. But for typical residential loans, you can put a second on a residential loan at any point. So that's a way to go about it. And
usually there's a total debt service coverage ratio
on a commercial loan, yeah, there's a total debt service coverage ratio. So a lender will let you put a second on a commercial loan typically if you can hit a 1.25 or whatever their DSCR requirement is. But typically you're not going to hit that with a 100% leverage deal. So
Not up front.
Not up front.
Yeah.
So they're not going to let you leverage it like that. Like I have one friend who does 100% leverage on every deal. He goes and buys property, he puts it under his management control, sets the seller's price and says, once I get it to this performance, I know if I put it 100% leverage with a second, it will DSCR. So at that point, he closes, if that makes sense. It's kind of complicated. So he takes over the property before purchasing it, gets it to performance to hit whatever price the seller wants, and then he has the relationship with the bank where they'll let him leverage it 100% if he has it at that performance to DSCR. And does everyone know what a DSCR is around here? If you don't, DSCR, so it's a debt service coverage ratio, and it's just the bank looking at how much money you're making for every dollar of debt. A typical number they're doing is 1.25, so meaning you're bringing in $1.25 of income, NOI, for every dollar of debt. And every bank's a little different, and depending on the project, like if you have a value add project, they'll let you go lower, or different
Dollar
things.
of debt service, so you're
Dollar
talking
of debt
about
service,
the-
which is
Yeah.
just
mortgage amount.
principal
Yeah.
and interest, yeah.
So you have 125%
Mhm.
of income versus.
Yep.
Your
Well,
net
it's
income.
after your operating expenses.
Yeah.
Yep, so net
Net
income,
income.
which is just your gross income minus all your operating expenses, and then your debt is your principal and interest. Yep.
So if you're able to do deals where you're at 80%, using a traditional mortgage and then 20% seller finance after closing, what price is recorded with title then? Is it
Oh, same
full-
price, so you're
full
doing it,
price?
so it's a
Yeah.
normal transaction on the front end, just normal deal, exactly the same. So it's the easiest way to think about it is, it's just like doing a HELOC or a second 5 years down the road, like
Right.
everyone does, but you're doing it much sooner after. And who better to borrow money from than a seller that just got paid out a ton of money?
Gotcha.
So, and you can do this without recording a second also. Like you can borrow debt from people on a promissory note. It's just harder to borrow debt unsecured for some people. In the residential space, maybe not. Like a lot of people are happy to give promissory notes, don't know what a promissory note or second is or whatever it may be. So,
Yeah, I've owned my house long enough now that I got a line of credit at Umpqua Bank at 3% fixed, for $192,000. I tap into that as well when I get down payments, and then I can flip properties a lot easier once you get a good, strong equity. But if you have a father-in-law or a grandpa that's got big equity and he still has income to cover that second line of credit, he could be a partner at twice of what he's borrowing. He's borrowing at Umpqua Bank for 3 to 5%. You can make him a partner at 8% with no payments until you sell the property.
sure. Yeah, and there's
You're in
a
and out.
oh yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do it. So this is one way to do it. I mean, you can, the idea of going and it's the same idea of going and borrowing money from anyone and using it as your down payment. We just like to do it from a seller on some deals because we know we can hit their high price and they'll give us a carryback at those numbers. Yeah,
How long are your notes structured for, do you know?
longest possible usually. So I mean, every deal's a little different. Like we have a lot of notes at 10 years, and some of the value add properties were at 5 years. So we're calculating our exit like DSCR, cap rates, interest rates, so we can create enough equity and value add within a property to pay off all the debts at that point. The goal is to refi, pay off the first and the second, and have 75% equity still to keep the property. So it just depends. Like you could do it without, just sell the property and do different things. Shortest term debt, I have 2-year debt on some properties, but I'll go use hard money, do whatever value add I'm gonna do, refi, sell, and whatnot. So that's the cool thing about seller finance though, it's all negotiable, like any rate. Like we have millions of dollars of debt at 3% interest only for 10 years, which is really good debt.
Yeah, you can make any deal work. That's kind of the upside to it. But
What are your favorite levers to give the sellers the price they want? What's the first piece that you go to? Is it interest rate or something?
Yeah, interest rate on the second, because a bank will allow you to put, like, you can use this creatively too. Like a bank will allow you to put a second on close if you bring 25. Maybe you go interest rates right now or whatever, 6-7%. Seller's willing to carry at 3. You have the first mortgage of 40, second mortgage of 40 with the seller at like 3%, so you can get a blended rate of 4 and bring 20% to a deal and make a deal pencil still. So you can use it in all different forms. You can over leverage a deal, you can under leverage a deal. Like there's a lot of factors you can play with to make a deal work.
So by over leverage, you mean
He
like
means-
get 60%
So-
from
I was
the
about
bank
to
and
clarify.
50% from the
You
seller?
could do
Yeah.
that, and you could do that with a second
yeah,
mortgage,
sorry.
because if a seller will give you a loan for whatever amount you want in a second
Especially if
mortgage.
you're gonna do rehab and need some money.
That's
Yeah.
the best example.
So, yeah,
You
and
just-
they may not care, like, I mean, it's up to them to decide to give you a loan and determine if their security is safe for whatever position they're in. So you could go leverage a deal as far as you want, and it's just the seller is taking on risk at that point, obviously, because if they have to go foreclose, property's not worth enough, and then I don't know what they do at that point.
Yeah.
But also for you, if you're leveraging the deal that far, you're probably not gonna make money, and, you know, depends on the deal.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned refinancing down the
Mhm.
road, right, paying off the first and second.
Mhm.
So what happens if you can't do that, or what are some common things that would prevent you from being able to do that?
Yeah, so the common like things we've seen people fail with the model. So like too short of a like term on the debt, right? Assuming rents are too high, you don't have a value add property, so you're not creating equity. So basically, you're combining all those different factors to where you don't have enough equity to pay off all the debts. At that point, I mean, you can provide security in different ways. If they have a second mortgage, they go foreclose and whatnot. If you have just personal guarantees, depends on how you structure it and the security at that point. But if you're combining all those different factors, having short terms, yeah, you could screw yourself over. So ideally, that's why we go for the longest term possible, try to underwrite conservatively and have plenty of strategies to sell. Because if we're planning to keep the property, worst case, we messed up on a few factors. Maybe we have 10% equity and we can go sell for 5% discount and still, you know, come out with some money.
The goal isn't to pay off both of them. The goal is when we look at something, the assumption is that we'll be able to get commercial debt from a credit union lender, whoever it may be. The goal is to make sure that whenever that note expires from the seller, who's usually who we're asking for the loan on it, the goal is to make sure that we can pay off all the principal on that, because we go interest only on most of these too, because we'd rather have principal in our pocket as opposed to paying it down to a seller. And then the upside for them typically is that we say, hey, you have offers at 90% of what your list price is. And so, yeah, we're going to give you 3% interest only for 5 years or 10 years or whatever it may be. But you have to bake in the fact that we're overpaying for it, right? Overpaying right now at least. So from what the market's saying, I mean, we have examples from properties we put offers on that we probably shouldn't throw out, but where it's like they were going to get, well, actually, the best example, we had an offer on a property for $2 million, okay, and they had a $600,000 carryback for 5 years, 3% interest only, and we were like, hey, this is, you know, best we can bring. We think we can get it to this number in 5 years and get you out of it. And they said, I don't want to carry a note, and they took an offer for 145. So they took another $50,000 up front instead of the extra $600,000 upon exit. And that, you know, doesn't make a lot of sense to, but I think, you know, from your perspective, it's pretty easy to see why maybe carrying a note for 5 years would make sense. You're putting an extra, you know, or you're leaving $50,000 in so that you can get $600,000.
Oh yeah, and that's the
5 years.
thing. Like, so carrying a note doesn't make sense for all sellers. So
Yeah.
when we're talking to a seller, we're typically asking what their plan is, and we're not pitching them on carrying a note. So it's just like, hey, I don't want a 1031. I don't want to pay all this tax. It's like, all right, perfect. Would you like to carry a note, collect some interest, and not have to do anything? And that's typically an older seller self-managing and doing that.
Can you go more into specifics on like the avatar, or the seems like the ideal property owner, and does it change from single family to multifamily to commercial?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the aspects of that?
It's hard to say because, like, I mean, I've sold properties on contract before, and I'm not your typical avatar for it, like young and whatnot, and I've sold on notes. But I mean, most commonly, it's someone self-managing, below market rents, don't want the headache, and you can, like, we've tried to do 100% leverage deals where they're getting paid whatever, call it $100,000 a year, they're collecting income, but their rents are 50% below market. So we're like, we can pay you $120,000 a year. You don't have to manage it. You don't have to do anything, and we have upside, and we can go raise the rents.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say because every deal is so different, and especially right now in the current market, we see a lot of opportunity in the single family space where people bought stuff like a year or two ago. They have no equity in the home. If they go to close, they're gonna have to write a check. So we see a lot of deals where you can just wrap the debt or subject to or take over their mortgage. Like one deal we're doing right now, it's up in Washington. The dude he has no equity in the home, so he'd have to write a check for like 30 grand at closing if he wants to sell. 4 months behind on payments, so we're just bringing $6K, $8K to the closing table, taking over the mortgage and renting it out. And there's a lot of deals like that as well.
And it seems like a lot of those situations, the rents wouldn't justify it, but is it just such a good, because it's got such a great interest rate,
So,
the
yeah.
payments are so low that rents are
Mhm.
gonna.
Yeah, right now it's super interesting because over the last couple of years, everyone has 2% to 4% interest rates. So it's really easy to rent out those properties and have them cash flow or at least break even. And we're fine with break even and negative cash flow properties if we're bringing 4K down because you're paying down so much principal over the time period and you're bringing so little cash. Yeah.
Are people open to this? Are you usually finding off-market deals, or are you approaching people who've got a property listed and you're like, hey, you should consider?
So the best way to find deals is to talk to as many people as possible. So you'll find it all sorts of different ways. You'll find it from brokers. Like we have brokers in this room who bring us deals. Thank you for joining. And we call on market properties, off-market properties. Like it's literally just talking to as many people as possible. And we help people structure these deals all the time, so people just start bringing the deals. Because like if someone brought us a deal, we'd say, hey, we recommend you do this. Maybe they can't qualify for the finance or whatever. So we're like, yeah, we'd love to partner with you on this deal. So we do start doing a lot of those deals too.
We do call every on-market apartment complex though. I mean, there's no reason not to, because typically for the structure, it's like, okay, we probably need like 4 things. They're sick of it. They're not going to do a 1031. They want to sell it, and then they're okay carrying paper. And so, I mean, if you have one of them, which is for sure they're going to sell it, and then a lot of times it'll say, planning to do a 1031 or not planning to do a 1031. And so you've already got 2-year factors for what we're looking for in a seller. So, no.
Say those 4 factors again, I didn't write that.
I won't say that that's like exactly what they are, but I mean, we need some. If they're going to do a 1031, it makes it a lot harder. So they can still do a 1031, and frankly, in most cases, when somebody does a 1031, they don't need all of their equity out. And so depending on how much is paid down, if they're doing a 1031 into a vacation home, they're going to rent out, and it's really going to be an investment property, then they've got a $2 million property that they only need $800,000 out of. Or there's any number of examples where there's an office space or there's whatever it may be. Needing 100% for somebody who's older isn't typical, and then even then it's a lot of times it's just moving states because they found a good deal, or it's moving cities because they found a good deal. And so it's not even that they want to get rid of the property or that they need all of that money. It's just that doing a cash out refi doesn't appeal to them, and so they want 75% or 80% out. But not doing a 1031 makes it a lot easier. Somebody who's sick of the property, somebody who wants to sell it for sure and still would like cash flows because they're not doing a 1031, that they're not gonna, they don't want to pay all their tax on it up front. And then what was the final one? Oh, wants to carry paper. Those are the things we need, is somebody who wants to carry a note, which is really common right now with where prices are at. Because we just say, hey, since we're on a downturn, can you let us wait until the next upturn to pay the upturn price as opposed to where prices should actually be right now? And so the best lever for us right now is price, because we can overpay on a 10-year note, right? Because you're not actually overpaying 10 years down the road. If you had to pay it off right now, then you'd be in trouble. But we can just say, hey, value will be right around here in 10 years, and we've paid down principal on the note, so
And
we're happy.
Usually we're looking at that is you can still buy a property under value and know if you get rents to market today, it's worth today this price. So you're not just guessing where it will be down in the future. We're looking at today's price, and we know market rent is here.
With rent control, that's why we need 5 years.
Yeah, so that's what the time frame is typical. Because if someone we're buying a property right now, it rents for $900 a unit. Market rate's $1,400. Where it's worth 1.6, we're paying 1.85 for it, but we know it's 2.4 today at market rate.
So the deal that you were referencing that we were working on together, what killed it was the seller wanted to do an exchange, but the other thing that killed it was he talked to a CPA.
Yeah.
So any advice on talking to CPAs?
Yeah, it's a lot different in some CPAs. We end up connecting our CPA with their CPA a lot of time. And a lot of time we're kind of aggressive. We throw a lot of offers out just because we know more offers you throw out, more properties you put under contract, more you can close on. So we're not underwriting or looking at a lot of deals super close on the front end. We're looking at general terms, and that was a big value add deal. So we're if he's in the ballpark, we'll go look at it and then figure out on the back end. But the idea is for them, they get to carry a note and go from there. It was his CPA saying he couldn't carry the note or he would have to pay tax. Because we hear that a lot where they think
Yeah.
they have to pay tax on the note.
Yeah.
And then we explain how escrow works. And basically when you close on their closing statement, they don't receive money. You set up a holding company with escrow and the note goes straight there. And that's where we make payments too, so they don't receive money and they don't have to pay tax on it until the balloon comes.
I think in hindsight, we should have gotten CPA's time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he was asking one of the questions, where do you find these deals?
Mm-hmm.
I work with Fidelity Title, and they have an app that I can go on my computer and look up an address, find out who is the real owner. Don't buy from the tenant, he'll sell you everything. If this house needs a roof on it, they're $8,000 to $10,000. People might not have that money to spend. That's a good prospect. Look at the yard conditions, and the roof conditions, the paint conditions, and old cars laying in the backyard. These people are probably your prime. I don't mean to give away all my secrets. I won't find another house for 6 years, but that's the situations where you find good deals. I found one that has a estate they can't even afford to probate. They've been living in it for 3 years. I was told about it, so I'm buying it subject to probate being finished. I'm paying for the probate, all the closing costs and everything, but my price is good enough that I'm gonna make money when I'm done. So look for crippled properties and get a hold of the title company so you can do your own search on the properties. And Fidelity, any of the title companies will do that, but I'm working with Fidelity this year. They've taught a lot of classes to me.
Do you have to be a broker to have access to?
No, if you promise, hey, I'm gonna bring all my deals back to you, I plan on doing 5 to 6 a year. Either that, or you just say, could you send me a listing kit on my email? A listing kit is something where I'm gonna list the property, but in your case, you're gonna buy it, and you're gonna go back to them for the title report, and they love that. That's how they get their business, is servicing the clients that bring the business back to them. So if they catch you, you get all that information from them, you close it tight for, and you got it all from Fidelity, you might have kissed your good relations their way. Relations with your bankers, like he's saying, and your title companies are real important. And I do not believe you have to be a broker to get that information. If you're an investor, they wanna work with anybody that'll close a house.
Yeah, and don't buy data. If you guys are gonna try to do any marketing or calling or skid racing, just go to Fidelity and tell them what you're looking for. Like I want houses in Corvallis with high equity that haven't sold in the last 10 to 15 years, that non-owner occupied, that, you know, the list goes on, right? You can work with them.
Yeah.
Their sales rep will pull that list for you and send it to you for free. So don't ever buy data.
Who's that?
Fidelity. Or any title.
Fidelity, any of the title companies, like 4 or 5.
Yeah, they'll all do it.
And in that report, it'll show you the first mortgage on it, and it'll show any other mortgage that's been recorded on it. So you can see a house with 80% equity, that might be a potential seller for a carryback, because they only need half of it to go traveling to Arizona in an RV, or trade an RV in on them. If you got somebody in the family that's got an RV you wanna get rid of, ask them if they wanna take that in on a trade.
Can they pay regardless of what county you're in?
What's that?
Like if you're on Fidelity title and you wanna find a property in Lynn County.
Oh, Lynn County, all over the state of Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, find the title company in that county, but yeah, they can pull it up from there.
I called title companies in Boston, and I said, hey, who's the best realtors out there? I'm gonna get a referral fee, but I don't wanna get a brand new newbie that just got his license, doesn't know anything, so they referred me to somebody. I got a referral. When he sold his house, I got a referral in LA. I never saw the properties, either one of them or the client, I got $2,800 in referrals. So title companies are your best friend.
So, have you guys looked into assumable loans or tried to do anything with some of the government?
Yeah, so like,
are those coming?
Yeah, there's a lot of FHA loans and VA loans that are assumable. They take like 6 months from my understanding to close. So it's a good option if you have an FHA loan available and you can assume it. It's just a little more complicated.
So you
but
have to have FHA
eligibility to do so. And there's a lot of them available on the market, or you can see like from the title companies who has an FHA loan and go that route. But, yeah.
Kind of going back to the beginning, so you said you started house hacking,
Mhm.
and then you were convincing your friends to buy houses and doing subject to.
Mhm.
Did you have trouble? And then you went to a brokerage, so you didn't have a W-2 job.
Mhm.
How did you get into creative financing and still get a bank loan for 80%?
Yeah.
Are you just buying like lower priced houses? Like,
Yeah.
without
So
W-2?
there's a couple different ways. So I bought, well, the big answer is with partners. So if you find deals, like I started out I sat down with someone, they taught me how to find a deal. That was the thing. I'd bring them the deal, they'd give me a portion of the deal, they would set it all up, and I'd learn how to do it. And that's a big way we find deals now. Like everyone we talk to, we're like, yeah, we'd love to do a deal with you. Bring us a deal, we'll help you structure it, we'll help you finance it, you'll own part of it. If you're a broker, we'll even pay you to sell it to us, and you can own some. So finding the deal is the big thing. If you can find a deal, there's ways to do it. And some of the first deals I did were just like, we do conventional deals too. Like creative finance is a great tool, but it's super limited because you have to find like this gem of a seller, which there's plenty of them out there, but it's just one tool in your tool belt. Like we use hard money, we do conventional deals, we do every deal possible, and that's just one of the tools.
Do you guys actively manage to like get rents up to market? Do you guys have that stuff in house, or do you turn it over to some management group that that do all that?
So I use property managers. I have like 3 or 4 different property management companies I use. I work with SMI, so we use them within the area. But it's staying on top of your property managers and making sure they're, pushing rents to market. Because with the commercial property, all your value comes. It's not from comps. It's from where your rents are and your NOI. So you have to stay on top of them and make sure you're getting rents to market, which pros and cons to different property management companies. They know, like we work with some property management companies and they just want to go below market, fill it fast, but you're missing out. Like, so if on a 5 cap, for example, if you raise rent by $100, that's $24K in equity that you create. So if you have a 4-unit property, you can create $100,000 in equity by raising rent $100 on each unit. You raise rent by $300, $300K in equity.
Wow. I had a question on the value add piece. Were you guys specifically looking to like do any renovations, or are you just looking at properties that don't have market rents currently?
My favorite property is property that needs no renovation and just has below market rent, and you can just raise rent. That's not super common. Typically, you're having to go do renovations. So we've bought properties that are like about to get condemned, and we're going and dropping $25K a unit, fixing them up, and doing that. But it's just kind of a deal by deal case. But yeah, it's finding a distressed property, and that may be physically distressed or just rent roll is super low. Self-manager doesn't want to go turn units and do basic stuff. It's easier for them to have a paid off property collect $600 a month in rent rather than, raise it, they leave and go fill it.
A lot of times that is the upside on the way we structure deals though, because like the deal he was talking about earlier where the lady came to us and she had a 14 unit and she said, I know this is worth 1.6. I'm going to sell it to you for 185 because it's in good condition, and I know you can get rents from $895 on average to $1,400 because I've looked at the market. And so she's saying, hey, once you get it there, I know it's worth 2.4. Like I'm in the game for a reason, but I don't want to deal with it, right? And so she's an older lady, and she just said, hey, you do the work, get a little. There's plenty of meat on the bone. I just want part of it, right? And so the biggest deal that they've done together was the one that was about to be condemned, and the guy gave 3% interest only for 10 years on like a $3 million note, because he said, hey, I know I probably haven't been the best manager, but I know what these units will be worth if you guys do all the work for me, and so just give me a little slice of the pie, and I'll sell it to you guys, and then I'll take it over a 10-year term because I just kind of want payments now. Obviously, I haven't done. He hadn't done his part for the last 25 years of owning it. So he said, hey, it makes sense to go with you guys and you'll give me a little piece of it, I guess. So.
Are you guys strictly in residential spaces, or are you looking at any other type of commercial property?
No, so I buy mostly residential, but I'd buy retail and anything else. Like, I'd buy industrial. I'd even buy office. Like, we've made offers on office space. We know multifamily is the best right now. That's mostly what we buy, but we would buy other stuff also.
So what, when you're having a conversation with the seller, what kind of things would you say to them, like overcome objections, or what are the big selling points, like tax
Mhm. So we're typically not trying to overcome objections because we're trying to figure out what's best for the seller and like just give them honest feedback. So we'll tell a seller like, hey, we would buy it like this, but I think you should list your property, which helps we're brokers, so you know we can make money on both ends.
So in my experience,
Mhm.
it's a huge, like there's a learning curve for the seller. So we're not usually going after apartment buildings for
Yeah.
seller financing. So it's like
Mhm.
someone's owned this rental property for maybe
Yeah.
three in town, they free and clear, they've had it for 25 years, and you
Mhm.
come talk about the seller carry, and they're like, what is that?
Yeah,
So
so-
there's a huge
Mhm.
conversational, educational piece of it.
Yep.
And so you get to talk to them about taxes, and you get to talk to them about, so like in that scenario, which I think is the one that most of us are facing, like
Mhm.
what are some things that would pique their interest that they're not typically aware of?
Yeah, so to comment first on that, so typically with like multifamily space, those owners are savvy owners. They know what owner carry is. A lot of them bottom on the same structure, so they're very familiar. They know the benefits. They know, a lot of them prefer to sell it on owner carry. Like we have one owner, he's like, I want 10% down, 30-year AM, 4.5%. I'm selling my whole portfolio like this. And he just knows the benefits. In the residential space, not so common. They don't know what seller carries are a lot of the time. So at that point, it's usually we're asking them like, oh, like what is your plan? Are you just gonna pay tax on that? Have you talked to your CPA? Do you know what your tax bill is? And then once they go have that conversation, they're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to pay whatever, I'm gonna lose $200,000 or whatever it may be in taxes. And they're like, okay, well, we can help with plan, installment payments and whatnot and go from there. Typically it's the talking to them about tax and they realize they don't want to pay all that tax and they're not going to go do anything with that money. So if they're going to go take that money, put it in their savings account, not spend it, it's like, all right, would you like to collect 6% interest on it instead? And then a lot of the time too, it's if you're finding a distressed seller, they're willing to work with you and do a lot of different things to get out of the property. So if you don't have a distressed seller and they want all the money now, it's like don't even bother pitching them on seller carry. So it's kind of having that conversation of what their plan is and just seeing if it makes sense for them to do. And then I would still pitch it either way because a lot of time it will tell them it doesn't make sense for them to do, but they still, for whatever reason, want to sell at that price. So you don't have to put your mind in the seller's mind. You may not do it, but for whatever reason, they still may want to.
You guys are more.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Have you, so kind of with Burr in mind, right?
Mhm.
So obviously we want seller financing and get rates for as long as we can.
Mhm.
But assuming it's just helping us get to that Burr point where
Mhm.
we have written and stuff, have you guys messed around with exchange securities and exchange collateral?
Oh, like moving debts to different
Yeah.
properties?
So like
Mhm.
you have a conversation, well, what are you gonna do with the money? And they say, I'm
Mhm.
gonna put it in the bank. You're like, okay, you're gonna make best case scenario on my bank 3%, best case scenario. We'll give you 6, 7, 8, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then they like the passive income, obviously, because they're
Yeah.
So, I'm ready to burr, I've done my work, I've got my
Mhm.
rents up, but I don't wanna lose that money.
Yep.
What do I do?
Yeah, so that happens frequently. I mean, I'm a little bit younger. I've been investing for 4 years, so I haven't even taken my properties to allow the balloons on them. I have friends who have, and they find the sellers do like that carry, and they will move the debt, and they just, want to keep getting the payment, so they'll move it to another property. They'll become a lender on another property with the payoff, or they'll just do promissory notes on a lot of time. Because they do, like you're saying, they just like the payments, they realize they don't have to do anything, and they get used to the payment on it. So you can garage your debt and move it around to different properties depending on how you set it up on the front end, especially with promissory notes. But yeah, you have a lot of different options.
I have an idea on your carrybacks. If you get a person to carry back for like 10 years, interest only, make sure that you put in a clause that you have the first right to buy. If they want to sell the note to somebody at a discount, you have the right to pay that off at the discount. So if you still owe them $40,000 5 years ago and they're gonna discount to some mortgage company for 30, you have the first right to buy that 90 days to prepare that loan.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take advantage of that discount they're willing to take on the tail end.
Sure, and people do run in that scenario where maybe they set up a note and plan their future out, and they'll sell it on a discount. We see that all the time with deals we broker and different deals we help people structure.
You guys get into the trusts, talking about how to package it up and hand it on to their kids and things.
I haven't had to do that. At that point, I just sit down with the attorney and you know, figure out how to pass it on.
More as an idea.
But
Yeah.
no,
Obviously, we're not qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
to do that.
No, it's certainly a fear for a lot of the guys we talked to, though. Like, we had guys who, well, I mean, a lot of the conversations are, dude, I'd carry this thing for 20 years because cool, but I'm gonna die in 5. So, because I'm 80. So it's, I mean, maybe I won't, but maybe I will. And I don't want my kids to have to deal with trying to figure all that out. And it's not that it would be super confusing, but it's just like, let's be straightforward. Like, I'll just give them money. So, I mean, the most recent deal that we had under contract, that was the case. Said, hey, we'll carry it, but we're gonna make it hurt. So we'll start at 4, and then we're going to 8 or 7, and then we're only gonna do it for 5 years because we're old, you know. But they actually helped us structure the deal because it had gotten in the same way, and so that's a huge part of talking about. Unfortunately, that was the last thing in their portfolio that they sold, but. They were like, no, we got in this way. We know exactly what you're doing. We want security like in this form instead of the way that we had written it out. And we were like, oh, okay. I didn't even, you know, that is a good idea. And so, but they said, hey, we got to get out in a shorter period. Kind of nervous about that one actually, but.
So I know the class is called creative financing, but you guys mentioned 2 words that I can't get out of my head, and that was credit union.
Mhm.
And going back to starting out and getting that first crack at bat, you were saying you need a partner. But
depending on how big of a deal you want to do. So like a
Right.
commercial loan, typically they'll loan you like equivalent to your net worth on loan amount. Sometimes a little different. So
what's a credit union typically look at in you and your partners, and
Mhm.
what's needed to establish that relationship?
yeah, so they're gonna look at your net worth and they're gonna look at the deal and see how it performs. They'll look at your global debt service coverage ratio too. But I mean, your biggest criteria is net worth. So like, it's not super hard to get a commercial loan. Like we have a lot easier time getting commercial loan. Like I can't qualify conventionally because I have so many tax returns and different things. But like I can get commercial loans all day. So a commercial loan is a lot easier than some people think, and you can do a deal. Like sometimes we'll have a deal too big for my net worth or my partner's net worth, and we'll bring on another partner to them. Hey, take 5% of this deal, sign on the debt with us, and you know, don't bring any money, be part of it, so we can qualify for a larger debt. So using partners in that way, like it's better to do the deal and give up a portion of it than not be able to do it at all.
You said you use a few different property managers.
Mhm.
What are you looking for when you talk to them, and are you finding any of your deals through your property managers?
I haven't found any. I asked all the property managers to let us know. But I'm assuming everyone asked them that. With our property management company, I've mostly relied on my partner actually for that to run and do the deals. My biggest role has been like underwriting and finding deals, and going from there. But with a property management company, you want to make sure they're pushing rents is the biggest thing, and then they can actually handle, if you have a rehab, like the value add. I have some property managers on just non-value add properties, and all they're doing is collecting rent, going and fixing a dishwasher and simple stuff. So making sure they're responsive and whatnot. And the biggest thing for me in being able to vet them was like managing deals myself at first. So all the properties I bought at first, I just managed them myself to get the idea of what happened, how you do it. So then I could ask the property managers questions I would have.
So you said you're a broker, but you do mostly like the underwriting of it. Is that, so you remain licensed, you just work?
I told him he should drop his license.
You what?
I told him he should drop his license.
Yeah, so I invest mostly, but I
Yeah.
also broker. So, I mean, I just do, they're 2 separate things, but same space, so it's a
Okay.
helpful
Yeah.
thing to do.
Okay.
Every conversation we have is like what he said earlier, where it's like we write 3 offers. We also give like 5 options. And so it's not even, we tell them in like a tier list of what we think they should do, essentially. And so
Yeah, if you're talking to, so it's a different conversation if I'm renting a property, they have broker representation, like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't care. If I'm talking
Yeah.
to a client, then
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to tell them, you know,
Right.
the truth and
Yeah.
everything. Like we'll lowball and do all that on, they have other, if they
If
have
they have a
client, if they have a broker, yeah,
Yeah.
we don't care. They
Then
have
it's just-
professional representation.
then we're just buying it.
We're just
And so
buyers, yeah.
We disclose that we're brokers, but I mean, yeah, we try to play for ourselves.
So if you weren't a broker,
Mhm.
would you be able to write all those offers and options through another broker? Because a broker, obviously, they want top price because that's how they make their money.
Mhm.
If you're pushing seller finance through another broker,
Mhm.
how's that gonna work?
Pros and cons, like I have brokers broker my other deals all the time. If it's an on-market deal, like I'd love to get paid to buy my own deal.
Yeah.
But like I'm mostly trying to buy deals, so I have most of the deals I buy are through other brokers because my main goal is to buy the deal. And brokers have different opinions on that. So in the commercial space, they love double ending. In the residential space, they're more skeptical to do so.
I think too, just to bounce off that, I think Ryan will agree, it's a matter of getting what the client wants. So whether it's owner carry or not, doesn't matter.
In the commercial space.
No, in any space, to be honest.
I'm asking because I've probably, I think I've done like 20 something deals, not a single one has been for private market. So I'm pretty ignorant to that. I only hear, ancillary details about the process, and it seems to me
I think the key is the education of the brokers on the other side too. Because some will, if you have the typical residential agent is not in this room. Okay, so you're gonna have guys like Ryan, Russ, we don't know what's going on or that. Yeah, you just tell me what the deal is and let's see if it fits, right? So I highly suggest you reach out to your broker, whoever it is, and make sure you're trying to find those deals because there's a lot of people they know that aren't listed yet. There's a lot of becoming soon type properties that are out there too. That some people, I just had my own mom's house, so they're sweet on that. I really didn't want to list because of all the BS I had to do to get rid of it. And thankfully somebody came and got it before it came on market. So I didn't have to deal with it. And so you never know what's going to happen. So I encourage you to reach out to those people because they do know. And just for what it's worth, I think you're right. I think it's helpful sometimes to not have a broker's license. If you really want to do a lot more investing in seller deals, because we do have fiduciary to those people. The great thing is though, no matter if your broker or not have those options, I think that's the key, is listening to the conversation, asking the right questions, getting people to talk.
So I want to talk about how you present those options. Are you guys submitting like an LOI and you've got option A, B, C, or are you submitting multiple ones or just all over the phone? Like, talk more about
So it depends deal by deal case. So if we're talking to a broker and they have a good relationship with their client and they know what we're saying, then we'll just tell them and they'll go call their client and be like, hey, how does this work? And a lot of the time I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what seller finance is. I don't know what a wrap is. I don't know what any of this is. We'll just write them the actual offer, send over 3 offers.
Okay.
Sometimes just an email, type out an explanation. So it's kind of just talking to the other side and figuring out what's going on. Residential space, they usually have no idea. Most of the brokers in residential space, you guys all own more properties than all your brokers. They don't really own properties. They don't invest themselves. So it's hard to have that conversation. They have no clue what's actually going on, how deeds work, how title works. They didn't pay attention. See, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's why we meet with so many brokers, to your point, is it's like when he was talking to a residential seller and trying to explain a seller carry to him, there's a lot of brokers, even commercial or residential, who, can grasp the seller carry, because that's not, just be the bank, but once you get into kind of the more creative structures, a lot of times it's just like write up an offer and then it gets pitched the wrong way. Like one of the deals that we just wrote an offer on a house, it had a seller carry and then a purchase price that was a little bit different because the prom note was coming after the fact, and he thought that the purchase price included the prom note, so he thought we lowballed him by 50%, and we were like, oh no, it was at 560 and he thought we were giving him 380, and we were like, oh no, that's including, you add those two numbers together. And so having these conversations has been super helpful. The biggest deal he's closed, and the biggest deal I closed was just talking to brokers a ton. There's a broker that we're gonna meet with again in a month because he has clients who we just bought a deal from, and it's we don't care if he brokers every other thing from those clients, even though we know the clients. Because it's hey, they really like working with you, you pushed this one through, why would we not just buy it with you again? We could meet with the sellers, but they already have a relationship, and the goal isn't to cut ourselves 3% off or cut ourselves 4% off. It's just to buy the deals. So we're more than happy to pay broker fees if we get into it. So, and we're also, we're happy to underwrite anything you guys see. If it's just this seems like it might work, but what do you think you could do with it? Then it's we'll look it over. And we're happy to have the hop on a Zoom or meet with somebody and have the conversation. If you've got a great aunt that owns, you know, a 5-unit property somewhere that it might make sense for her because she wants mailbox money, then who knows? Not try to, sorry, that was a sales, but.
Yeah, we help a lot of people look at deals and come up with creative structures that we're not even buying just because we're deal junkies. We just like looking at deals. So.
I have one question on your rents. If you got like a fourplex that's got $800 a month rent, and you know it should be $1,400, upon sale they're close, what rights do you have with the state laws that you could raise that to 14%? It's something you gotta watch out for.
Yeah, so you can raise rents like.
You can renovate, but it's gotta be more than just painting a mailbox.
So yeah, if it's unsafe for them to inhabit, will you do the renovations? You can issue a KLR and have them removed with a 90-day notice. So, and that is a gray
So
area depending on
watch
how
your
it
rent
is.
control rules.
Sure, and then you have 7%
laws.
plus CPI, so that's why we're going for a longer balloon, and we know, hey, we're probably only gonna be able to raise rent 7 to 10% every year.
That's part of your education though to the seller also, why you have to have such long runway.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're limited on what you can do
Yeah.
with the existing tenants.
Yeah, and a seller, like, they'll be pretty lenient with you because they know you're buying it to make money. So if you're like, hey, like if I buy this just like this, I'm gonna lose whatever 20 grand a month. Like, who's gonna do that? If we structure it like this, I can break even year 1, I can make whatever year 2, and so on. So they're investors a lot of times, so they understand what you're doing.
Yeah, the deal we just bought, we told the sellers originally we had it structured with the bank loan and the seller carry, and then they came into a meeting and they were like, well, we'd actually rather just carry the whole note. So, we paid like a broker fee, and then we paid a little bit of, they had to pay off a note on another property, and then they carried 93%. So, and we gave them an interest rate that gave them the exact same net every month up front because we knew we could raise rents.
Yeah, so
and
like
so to them it was just like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I make the exact
So that was the deal where they're self-managing it. They have the rents at like $1,000 a unit. We paid them 5.25 IO for 10 years fixed, knowing we can get market rents to 1,400. So there's like that deal, terrible deal. We overpaid for it on a normal bank finance, but because we got 5.25 IO interest only for 10 years, we get to cash flow the whole life of the loan and not bring that much money to the deal.
And since we're in creative financing, I've got tenants that are all 800, it should be 1,400. I'll give any of them a $2,500 bonus to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keys for cash, cash for keys. And then your new rent can be market value.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you're not renting to that same person.
Back to wrap mortgages and or due on sale, is that mainly in residential side, in commercial, or does that depend?
Yeah, so commercial, depending on your like loan covenants and what's in your loan docs and talking to who's giving you the loan. Some of them will allow you to put seconds on it, and some won't. When you're wrapping a loan, commercial, a lot easier to assume loans than residential. You go talk to the bank if you're a qualified person. A lot of the loan docs have like the right to assume the loan.
If you have a prepayment penalty on a loan, it has to be assumable legally for commercial loans. If there's any prepayment penalty, it has to be assumable.
Check with your bank on that.
Yeah.
Do you read the time frame of the prepayment penalties?
Yes. Yes.
So that
Yeah.
I don't know.
the assumable nature.
Yeah, so
disappears
like
after
for any
the time.
HUD debt, right? When you talk specifically about any Fannie or Freddie debt, that's why every Fannie or Freddie loan is assumable. Because on HUD debt, you'll get 10 years or 5 years. Right, we got quoted at 10 years with 5.25 IO for the first 5, and it's because the prepayment was 8%, 7%, 6%. I mean, it's not because it was a really nice property, and so they don't give that on everything. It's property by property, but they have to make those loans. So you can't pay an 8% prepayment on a $8 million loan. Well, you can. You don't want to, but.
Alright, we gotta start wrapping this up real quick, but is there anything that I've been hogging the floor a bit too, but any questions that anybody has about maybe something you want to dig into about the presentation or any questions lingering? I think we probably do like 5 more and then we'll go on to intros and networking. That's okay with everybody.
Can you dig into a little bit more, like the very, very beginning thing you said, where you're like, okay, I've got a fourplex, I've got a friend who buys it, and then it's transferred it into an LLC, so it's subject to that previous one, and then you're buying into it. You said
Yeah.
a few percentage. So when
Yeah.
you say you own 100 doors, like you don't own 100 doors.
No, so I own 100 doors and I own about 50% of that portfolio. It's like a $25 million portfolio that I own about half of. Most of my stuff is owned with partners. I buy some deals by myself. But usually the pro to partners is, you have a smaller piece of a larger pie and you can leverage their strengths and your weaknesses.
But walk me through that.
Yeah.
So we've got a fourplex, right? And you're like, I'd love to buy it. I don't have the money. But
Yeah.
I got a friend who does.
So in that case, I had friends asking me like, hey, I want to invest in real estate. I'm like, great, you should buy this fourplex. Killer deal. You can do an FHA loan, 3.5% down. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't want to do it by myself. And I'm like, no, you really should. Like, it's a really good debt, like really good property. Like, I don't care. I don't want to. I'm like, okay, I'll do it with you. We'll create this LLC, right? We each own half. So we transfer title. He buys it, close the loan just like normal transaction, sells it to the LLC, where then I buy in and I own half of the LLC.
So where does your friend get the initial down payment from?
He just has the cash, 3.5%. So it's like most people have 3.5. Yeah, you can get a gift from a parent to do a loan like that.
So owner occupied.
Owner-occupied
They're planning on moving in. One of the tenants, if it's a full fourplex, somebody's got to move out. So in theory, this buyer moves in. So that's step one.
And so then you're paying half of that 3.5%.
Yeah, and you can structure that however you want. Like you could bring all of it. Like, I mean, for those deals, I'd be like, yeah, I'll give you 3.5% on half of the fourplex.
Okay, and then you're also offering to help manage it and teach them.
Yeah, and they're just mostly like, hey, I want to do real estate. I don't want to do this deal. We see a lot with Airbnbs because you got a lot of value if you know Airbnbs. People go buy a second vacation home. They're like, I don't want to manage an Airbnb, but I want to do this investment. It's only 10% down. Same type of thing. You can transfer title. You can manage it for them. They can pay all the cash for the furniture, but you can go furnish it all for them and handle it all. Okay. So there's a lot of different. You could do it with a house hack. You could do it with anything.
When you said the LLC buys it, what do you mean? You pay 3.5%?
Into the no. So there's different ways to structure and talk with the attorney on that. So we have the attorney draft all the LLC docs, tell us where to put the money, how to do it. So we're within the lines of all that. And an attorney will charge you like $200 to do it. It's not an expensive thing.
So your friend brings let's just say 10 grand, right?
Yeah, whatever. If it's
LLC,
20.
What money comes out of your pocket?
Yeah, so if it's like the idea is if it's 20 grand down, we're each gonna go 10 and 10. He's putting 20 on the front end. I'm buying back in for 10. Exactly. Yeah. And you could structure that though. You buy 100. It's all negotiable between you and a partner. So there's not one way to do it.
How does it work on title? So in essence, Kevin does the loan, right? I buy the house, and then we've closed the loan today. Trevor, you and I are going in on an LLC.
Yeah.
And we put that thing together. You still have the subject loan, right, from the mortgage, and then we just transfer title.
Transfer title to the LLC, and now the LLC is paying the loan, and you can service that through different things. You can have a property management company pay your loan for you, and they're collecting the rents and doing that. You can service it through an escrow company like Santiam Escrow is the only one in Oregon, I believe. There's online ones.
There's another one coming by the way.
Is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't remember their name, but there's another one.
Okay.
So does that put any trigger? So movement's carrying the paper, right? And they're like, wait, what's going on? There's now an LLC in charge here. How does that work?
Yeah, you trigger the due on sale clause, meaning the bank can call your loan due. So you want to have a backup plan for that, meaning, hey, we could go refinance it to it. So at that point, we were doing that because I had enough money to go just refinance it to a DSCR loan or whatever I wanted. And I thought the risk after talking to the attorney was low enough that they call it, whereas fine. And we thought we got a good enough deal where we could just resell it also, worst case.
Did you have that happen?
No, we never had it happen. And then we sold it again on subject to a transfer to them again.
Wow.
How common is it that the loan will call we'll call it?
I've never seen it. My attorney, when I was talking to him, he said in 30 years of doing it, and he's done tons of transactions like that, he's never seen it. I've heard of people getting it called.
Yeah.
The solution they came up with was transferring title back to the original owner and doing a lease option on it.
Okay.
A lease option is another really good way to buy a property. You take control of the property, you're not on title, and then you have the option to purchase at some point. It's harder to refi and do things at that time, but you have That's a good way to get into properties.
I have a friend who his dad owned a property and he transferred it to my friend, and through all that he was trying to figure out where to make the payment. So we actually called the bank and said, "Hey, we did this. What's going on?" And the bank, the person they were talking to, was like, "Oh my gosh, like you triggered this thing. You got to do it." And he started freaking out. Well, eventually he made up the phone tree, and some guy was like, "Well, you made all your payments, right?" It's like, "Yes, whatever."
That was where I was gonna get at. I mean, the bank just wants to get paid. They don't want to have to deal with the whole situation. They don't want to own the
It's not worth the
property.
paperwork.
They don't
It's
have
not
to.
money
They don't want to have to foreclose. They don't want to
Yeah,
have to.
it is a risk to be aware of though, and
Yeah.
that you have to be comfortable taking that risk when you're doing so unaware
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
I've heard that somebody, or that people will make an LLC in the old owner's name to find subject to. Have you ever heard of that or tried that?
So any time it transfers title, it'll trigger.
I mean,
So
yeah, but if
escrow
someone's
can
just
see that.
sweeping title and if it's an actual just visual check, sure, like maybe
Yeah.
they don't notice it.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know.
Typically, it's
But-
like up to escrow to inform them, is what we've been told. We don't actually know, but that's what we were told. Because that's what, yeah, somebody told us to change it from John Smith to John Smith LLC, and it was kind of, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. When you're underwriting your deals, do you put any bonus depreciation, cost segregation into your underwriter, or is that just
Not
bonus?
just bonus. Yeah, I'm underwriting it without all that on the front end because I'm not taking other investors' money and like pitching them on it ever. So we're just trying to underwrite conservatively just on the front end, cash flow, loan pay down typically, and we're not assuming any appreciation just on property values at all, just current market rate and where we think cap rates and interest rates will be.
He's saying not natural appreciation.
Yeah, not just assuming, hey, real estate goes up by 4%.
Because as far as like
every
the
year.
commercial realm goes, what he said earlier was where it's the only time the property appreciates is rents increasing,
yes.
or
Yes.
expenses decreasing. So if we see that we can come in and lower management fees because we have SMI property
Or
management,
whatever efficiency.
yeah, whatever it may be, then natural appreciation we account for, but not appreciation that we already know is there,
Yeah.
just value that's already current in the market. So rents below market.
Right, I was thinking depreciation.
No, I
Yeah.
get
No, we don't bother underwriting it because we're not running on that kind of a margin where we're like,
Yeah.
that's making or breaking a deal.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thanks, guys.
Well, I know you guys are a lot of times the last to leave. You guys like talking about real estate, so we'll call the Q&A for right now and go around the room real quick. I'd love to have everybody introduce themselves real quick. They're looking for something specific.